Here we are, back at the bench. Got a couple of penguins. Move them out of the way. And what do we have here under the penguins? A couple of Barber hounds. Swatys, actually, front Swatys. Now, Swatys are famous. You'll read all kinds of stuff about Swatys on the internet. You'll find people that say they suck. You'll find people that say, oh, they got to be 20K. They're the best finisher in the world. I shaved for 100 years off of one of these. And everything in between. So like the Olympics, just cut away the high score and the low score. Take a look at the middle ground, right? So basically, what I can tell you is Swatys, amongst Barber hounds of this type, these are pretty good. Maybe not the best, but they're reliable. You can get an edge you can shave with off of one when you use it as a touch-up hound. It's not a finishing stone. In other words, don't expect to go from an 8K synthetic directly to the Swaty, because that's not the way this was meant to work. Swatys, Barber hounds were designed, kept in your cabinet, you're shaving, edge isn't like cutting through the whiskers the right way. You lather this up, you hit it for a few laps, and then you see if you got a little bit more cutting power behind your edge, and then shortly after that you would take the razor in to be reground. So it was like preventative maintenance. Wouldn't last forever, you'd have to bring it in to have it rehoned. Steel wears. It wears unevenly. At least my razors wear unevenly because I shave with different parts of the blade, and they see different types of use. And so from this toe to the heel, a razor's edge under a microscope, a used one, it doesn't look the same all the way across. I mean, it's similar, but it wears differently. So using this just kind of dresses things up a little bit. So they came up in conversation on a forum a couple weeks ago, and someone was asking about theirs, and I can't remember the brand or too much about the entire conversation, except that at some point, some guy, a poobah type shows up, and he starts saying like really stupid stuff and making idiotic claims. And just, talking at his ass. His reference point was videos from a guy who has really nothing to do with our community. So apparently he doesn't have his own evidence. He doesn't have his own testing. He doesn't have his own test results. He doesn't have his own experience. He doesn't have his own wisdom. All he's doing is regurgitating what he thinks is information, which is actually words extricated out of context to support his narrative, which was nothing more than confirmation bias. So I decided to not engage the guy because I don't bother with this internet fighting bullshit anymore. Somebody wants to be a rude jackass, that's fine, it's on them. I just block them and move on. But I figured it might be time to just do a little thing about Barber hounds, because there's a million of them out there. People ask about them all the time. They're a lot of fun. They're inexpensive. They're a nice thing to work with, to get an idea, to broaden your horizons. They're just not the best thing since sliced bread. But some of them can work. Swatys can work. Interesting history. These were made originally in the 1800s, late 1800s, and then they carried on into early 1900s. The original Franz Swaty, he made them in Austria. Then his son opened up a factory. I don't know. I can't remember all the history, but Yugoslavia is involved. Marburg, is it Marburg in Austria? I forget. There were wars going on. Boundaries were changing. Lots of political upheaval, all kinds of stuff. But all of that only, I bring it up only because, like you see here, right? This says Franz Swaty, whatever. This is 2 lines of text, right? And you see this one here says Franz Swaty, but there are 3 lines of text, right? So people will say, oh, the 3 lines are the one you got to get. Well, they're the same. That's it. Bottom line. I've had like a gazillion of these things. And I cannot get a definitive read on the 2-line being any different than the 3-line. I think the father and the son were doing, because the 2 lines are predominantly from the son. I think they were the same recipe, maybe stone to stone, some variation, maybe over time Poor storage conditions might affect an older one more than a younger one. There's a lot that goes on here. But I've had enough to say that I've had a good sample size under my belt on my bench, and I say the 2-line and the 3-line are identical. Now, this one is interesting because it's long. It's an 8-inch long Barber home. These are pretty cool. You don't see too many of them around. This is the typical. Again, it's a 3-line. One of the points that the moron online was trying to say was like, there's no reason to buy one of these that needs work, because you can always buy one that's in good enough condition where you don't have to work on it, which is kind of like a real jackass statement, because just this, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've only seen like maybe 8 or 9 of these. They're just uncommon. And they're all kind of in the same condition, and they all need work. So, that statement he was making, there's like no need to buy one that, you should work on, is just false. It's just a false statement. It just proves that isn't what he's talking about. The other thing is, this was made in the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. Do you seriously think that this working surface is in good enough shape to finish a razor with now, today? Do you really? Name something that's been exposed to the elements in air, atmosphere, ambient, indoors, or whatever for 100 years that hasn't heavily oxidized and the surface condition has not changed at all. Name one thing. Pick one. Go ahead. You can't, because there isn't. So again, his comment about not needing to do something with them is based in some sort of weird-ass moronic speculation. So yeah, I've tuned up a number of these, and that's what the video is about. Get yourself a Barber hone, getting yourself a Barber hone, and then getting it ready to work with. Now, there are going to be people who tell you, "No, I just use it right out of the box. It's fine." Good for you. Here's a recently refurbished Barber hone by me. Right? You can see the highlights going across the surface. Here's the Swaty. All right. Listen, I'm going to put this by the mic so you can hear my finger go across the surface. Texture-wise, it's like fine sandpaper. Now, the lakeside. Smooth like a baby's butt. Now you tell me. Which one of these two do you think is going to be better for your edge? Common sense. The one that's been tuned up. So, and that was the gist of the thread I was in. I was explaining to the guy that should be lapped flat and then conditioned, and Mr. Know-It-All decides, to be rude. And yeah, he said something really stupid about flattening stones. I read the stuff that people say online, and it's like, I wonder, would you say that to my face if we met in the street? Chances are probably not. So then I wonder why people think they can do it online. Oh, yeah, because they're keyboard warriors. Forgot. Anyway, so basically, right, if you have this, and this is your working surface, this is 5 inches overall. So you're going to lose this portion here. Now, this impressed label, by far and large, on almost, I'm going to say every Barber hone I've ever had, the side with the label is the side to use, and it's the side that's going to be finest. If it's a two-sided one and the label's on one side, that's the finer side. And the back, if it's a different material or finished a different way, would be coarser. Now, you can do that. You can finish this to be a little coarser, but I mean, that's like really splitting some crazy hairs, and yeah, you can get into it and you can play around with it, and that might be a lot of fun for a lot of people, but I just don't bother going there. I have a frictionite, and it's two-sided. It has no impressed label, and one side is light and it's finishing, and the other side is darker and it's coarser. And be honest, I don't even use the coarser side. I haven't even used that hone in a million years. I actually don't use these too often, just for testing and messing around. So anyway, you have here, what, like 4.5 inches of space. So this is my straight edge. I've put my straight edge on top of this. I put a flashlight behind it, shine the light through, and I can see crazy light coming through. All right. It's actually got two peaks, the humped like a camel, which isn't good. Right. So there's that. And then this is like even worse. This is like pitched in two directions, blah, 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 blah. So on the topic of flat, for me, I want my bevel flat. I need a flat stone. If the stone is curved up or curved down, or it's curved up and then down and up and then down, all right, the flat bevel is going to become unflat because it's riding over curves. It's simple. It's logical. Now, to somebody else, that may not matter, but to me, it matters because over the bazillion razors I've honed, I have found flat stones work better for me. I get a more accurate bevel. When it's flatter, flattest, my edge width is thinnest. I mean, if you just think about it, all right, it just has to be, all right? Here he goes with the Post-its again, folks. So, all right, so please don't crucify me on the artwork. If this okay, is my razor on a cross section, and this is the faces of my bevel. All right, so this direction is to the spine, and this is the apex and the cutting edge. All right, the distance between here and here, all right, in there we measure that, and it's called edge width. The thinner the edge width, the more cutting power your edge can have. Now, there are other factors. It's not the bottom line, but it's a huge consideration. If your bevel is more rounded, obviously, okay, you're going to have a fatter dimension. It's just logic and reason. Period. Now, me, I want this. Somebody else might not think it's important. I do. So in the course of working with any type of stone, I flatten them. And I flatten them to dead flat. Now that's for razors. For my knife work, I don't get so crazy because I tend to beat the hell out of those stones. But for razor stuff, I check with a Starrett straight edge. It's guaranteed to 1/1000th. And I know this is not flat. Now, besides the fact that there's going to be rumbling here, remember, I threw it away. Let me unfold this for a second. Just wanted to make a point. Okay? This dimension, typically, is about half a micron or a little less. 1/2 of 1 micron. There are 1,000 microns in a single millimeter. That's like really freaking small. Okay? So, if you have like a undulating surface and you have this edge, this bevel, this actually has a bevel on it, see? If all right, and the surface is like a snake, okay? You're driving this very fine, this very thin piece of metal, like under half of a micron, into a curve that's upswept. You're pushing the steel up. You're pushing it out of the way. If the surface is flat, the apex is riding flat. And that's going to allow you to really reduce that dimension and keep both sides of the bevel flat and give you your best edge. I mean, that's just the way it is. So, you're walking down the street and you're like on a sidewalk, and then all of a sudden, like one part of the sidewalk, it's like raised up a little bit, and then your foot comes in and hits it and you trip. Well, that's what pushing a half micron blade across a stone that's not flat is like. Do you want a trip or do you want smooth sailing? Me, I want smooth sailing. So what I have to do is I have to lap this. All right, but there's something else I want to talk about too. You find these things are in not great condition other than just flat. Now you heard the surface condition, right? There's gook on here, and I can see that there's some shine under it, so it's not so terrible, but you'll find a lot of them have like a lot of drying. Like this one that I refinished, this came to me. This edge here was caved in and scooped. The blade was scooped from working here like this, right? With pressure to this edge. So there was this like weird concavity here. But the edge itself was really, really rough. It was like crusty. Now, these are very hard stones, and people will tell you that they're not porous. They will absorb some liquids. And I think what happens is when you use soap on them, it absorbs some of that, and soap goes to soap scum, and then it turns into crust. So the lakeside you just saw had to go through some extensive lapping and beveling. Now this one, this Swaty, has a divot chip here, and it has a divot chip there also. You see it? There's a little chip up on top here, which I normally don't like, but I didn't pay a lot for this. If I was buying this for myself, I wouldn't buy it because it has this chip and it just pisses me off. But for demonstration purposes, it's fine. For use, it's fine too. I just don't like having stuff like that in my box of tricks. The back I'm going to leave alone. So on this, I have to lap till it's flat. Over here, I'm going to do a chamfer on this side that's going to relieve that. And I may do an extended chamfer on the bottom to get that out of my hair. It depends on how much of this is gone from decking it. Once it's decked, then I can figure out where my chamfers are going to go. Then, after I get the initial lapping done, I'll figure out, how fine I need to make it. My experience with Swatys is I never have to go higher than 600, maybe 1,000. That's, 1,000 extra wet dry. But I use mineral oil to soak into them, and it takes a number of treatments, and sometimes with soaking I have to go back and relap. Now this one, I have a little divot up here. You can just run your finger over it and you feel like how sketchy that is. I would never put a razor over this. It's just too fine of an edge to be going over something like this. It's just, when that guy said you don't have to do anything to him, it's just like, what's wrong with you, man? Well, what's wrong with him is he probably never even touched one of these, and he's just talking out his ass because he read something on the internet and figured he would sound profound by regurgitating it on the forum I was on. Lucky me, right? So anyway, and you don't have too many people using these days, so there's not going to be a whole lot of feedback against a guy like that because people just, like 90% of the people, to me, it seems like are new. When I first came around, people were talking about these things like they were like God-sent stones. I mean, there was a lot of Barber hone talk, and there was a lot of admiration for how good these were. And like, the lakeside I showed you was claimed to be 20K, and the Swatys were like 15K. And then there's this other thing called the Panama was also up in that range. And it's like, I haven't found any of that to be true, but I have to remember most of those guys were finishing on an AK Norton, which is really a 3-micron stone. So maybe that little bump that they were getting from one of these seemed like a world of difference. I don't know, but they're not that fine. All right, they're just not. But if your edge starts to tug, you can bring it around. Can get you out of a jam. Nice to throw in a domp kit if you don't have like a little Thuringian or Codicule or something. You can get one of these for, as found condition, you can get these for under $20. And then you put time into it and make it really nice. If you want to find a condition one, it's going to cost you at least twice that, but that could be worth the price of admission for someone who doesn't have like all the right tools. Anyway, back to this guy. Both working edges here are pretty horrific. Not really making me happy, but I think this one is actually in better condition edgewise than the other one. The thing is, the working surface on this is really jacked up. It's gummy. It's impregnated with stuff. I can like smear it. It's going to have to be washed, stripped, lapped till I get a clean surface, and then I have to polish and progress from there. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lap these now, and I'm not going to bore you with showing you my sink and lapping because you've seen it a million times. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back from the lapping, and penguins go back to their roost, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so here we are. Look a little different, don't they? They're not perfectly flat yet. Basically, I lapped these until the coloring on the surface was uniform. Up until this point, there was like a corner here and a corner there, and this one had some like splotches. So I got it even, but there's still a little bit of a rise in this one. Not enough to really get nuts about, but enough for me to want to continue lapping it. And basically the same with this, although this one seems better relatively to this because this was like so whacked. This is, I mean, they're comparable right now, but this one was so out that the fact that it's only like a little bellied right now, it's really not driving me crazy. So, oh, you want to see the difference? How's that? That's the way it was before. In here in the label, you can see it, right? Dark. That's the way the face of the stone looked. But yeah, they're both dark on the back like this. See a little scuffing there, made it lighter. So anyway, what did I do? Here, I have an extreme chamfer to relieve that divot in the end because it was just too deep. I put a double chamfer here, and now this edge is nice and smooth. I run my finger across over. There's no divot left. All right. Because once I put the chamfer in, it was still visible on the side. So I went at it again. And I could have made it one long continuous chamfer, but I think it kind of looks better this way. Then up here, you remember there was another chip. What I did was I just put a bevel in, and it takes it right to this edge. So it kind of looks okay. I rounded the edges, took off the points on the corners. On the edges on the bottom, I beveled them a little bit, but even that's like a little rough. Whoever had this used it a lot. I can tell this was like banged around, carried around. Normally you don't wind up with too many nicks on these bottom edges, so I'm just going to go ahead and say that this one saw a lot of use. A lot of them didn't see all that much use. They got some use and then they got put away because people weren't achieving results that they were looking for, and I think that might have to do with them not being flat and people not understanding what they were for. But yeah, it's just a guess on my part. Now with this one, I didn't need a giant chamfer at the bottom, so I put chamfers all the way around, little ones, normal ones, lap the whole thing down. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a little bit of a speckling pattern that I see in a lot of Swatys, but not so much in this one. This has the speckles, and if you look at it with a 4x loop, use my loop, right? Get in there, I can see flecks of what appears to be aluminum oxide, which is, I'm pretty sure, the main abrasive that he used. But when I'm lapping, the water tends to turn like a little bit of a reddish purplish color, which I think is the result of ferric oxide. So I'm wondering if maybe these were Alox and Feox combined into some sort of ceramic binder. I'll never know. But the Swaty made by Pike did have ferric oxide in it. That I know. So maybe. Doesn't matter. Is what it is. So that's my work so far. The next steps will be for me to polish this down. I'm going to lap a little bit more, flatten it up a little bit. This is already lapped to 400. Got rid of the coarse marks. I'll lap some more on 400 and try and get this flatter, both of them a little flatter. And once that's done, I will lap them on wet dry paper. I'm not sure where I'll start. Maybe 400, maybe 600, probably 400. Maybe even sometimes I might go to like 325, but I don't have any real heavy marks. So I just need to polish to get this gloss back in the surface, and then I'll start applying what do you call it, mineral oil to it, and then I'll check from there. So if you're wondering if this works for any barber hone, I wouldn't go that far and say exactly that. Like the Panama hone, for example, has a black side to it that's supposed to be the finest side. Somebody once told me he thought it was lithied. Nobody can tell me what lithied is. I think it's just marketing bullshit. But I have heard that the lithied side of that hone and several other types, once you lap it, the polish doesn't come back. I think it can come back. I think people are just taking the wrong approach, but I haven't tried one myself. Other hones that are really dried out, you lap them, they just basically disintegrate on you. They turn into like, looks like sawdust. And I think they actually use like clay dust and sawdust as binders in these old ceramic binders. Something to think about. So no, I don't think every barber hone can be refurbished the way I'm doing it here. I do know that every Swaty I've done this way has worked out great. Every pike hone, every Norton hone that I've done this way has worked out great. A couple of others also, Knoxall, Shapley's, and just about anything that has this kind of hard-ass brown sort of chocolate bar look to it. But like I had a Boss that was a darker type of brown. That thing just fell apart on me, and a couple others. Could have something to do with heat degradation. Age isn't treating it well. I don't know. So just want to put that out there so you don't think that taking your barber hone find to a lapping plate is a definite fix, because I can't guarantee that. I can guarantee that all of the Swatys I've worked on have turned out fine. More work to be done here. So like I said in the last break, come back with another look on these hones. And until then, take care. See you in a few minutes. Okay, here we are back from lapping. So let me move these guys out of the way. What we have here now is a polished surface. I don't know if you can see, right? You can see the light reflecting. Good amount of reflectivity there. They're both showing the same type of thing. So that's really good. That's what we want. Before I mention the speckling here, there's speckling here too. It's just more prevalent in these for some reason. Might have something to do with the way they were baked. So, what do you want to do now? Well, what I want to do, right, I want to put something on the surface, keep it sealed, stop it from like drying out, becoming a problem, so on and so forth. And people will tell you that these are, non-absorbent. They're not porous. They are porous. Okay, they take a while to dry out. Water definitely soaks in. It can linger in certain areas. You can get it back out with a dry cloth by rubbing it sometimes, but it will take on moisture. Okay. So, and that's part of the issue over the years, constant use with soap and stuff, it gets soaked in. So there's that. So what I like to do, I use mineral oil. Put a little bit down, get a piece of cloth. I could use paper towel. I prefer to use a cloth. I think the cloth works better. It's less abrasive, softer. Seems to do a better job. Now speaking to the soaking in, see how can you see the lines? Tiger stripes? Yeah, that'll level out. But the first time you do this, that happens. I mean, even if the marks stay there, it doesn't matter. I actually lap the sides a little bit. But yeah, complete job. If I was like, I would lap the bottom too and then resurface that, but there's really no point in my opinion. So, see what we're looking at now? A lot more reflectivity, right? Most of the oil you saw me put down winds up getting absorbed by the cloth. I don't know if you can see it, but right now the surface doesn't appear to really be taking too much more in. All the little lines are gone already, though. And the more oil that soaks in, I can see a shadow of one or two, but just let that sit. Take this one. Now here's a little nick up here that I didn't see before, but it's in the chamfer and up above by the label. I won't be using that, so I'm not really worried about it. One thing about our community that should be looked at is this concept of like doing things once. Everything to me is kind of like a work in progress. All this restoration stuff, like when I do a razor, I put on scales. I don't necessarily feel that it's done because I always see areas for improvement, and often I will just take a chance one day instead of buying a new razor to do a new project or a new hone or whatever. I'll take the thing that I already own that could be improved, my work on it could be improved, and I'll do it. That's for me. Not everybody's the same, but it's part of that wabi sabi thing. Nothing is perfect. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing is ever finished. It's a very nice aesthetic. All right, so sorry about the lack of talking there. I was like really getting into watching the oil soak into the stone, trying to make up my mind to whether or not it's actually soaking the stuff in as fast as the other one. All right, so here we have it, round one of this. And we're not done, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to let this soak in tonight. And, wow, the exposure is really hot on my hands. I don't know, sometimes my phone goes nuts. Yeah, the auto exposure lock is missing. I don't know. Phone is going crazy. That's what I get for using a phone to do video instead of a real video camera. Anyway, sorry about that. But actually, the overexposure is helping you see the surface a little bit better, so I can live with that. I'm not going to reshoot it. I'm just trying to get the exposure better next time around. Anyway, I'm going to let this sit, and I'm going to come back to it maybe later tonight. But I'm going to film it again, like in a day or two. I'm going to leave my desk set up so I can get like everything pretty much the same again and show you what this looks like in a couple of days. What may happen, I may opt to go back and lap on 600 paper with oil. I may not. I have to wait and see how the surface comes up and how everything pans out. But in a couple of days we'll know, and I'll let you all know what happened. So until then, take care. See you soon. All right, so here we are, back for the final installment of the Barber hone restoration process. Get my penguins out of the way. All right, so here's the two Swatys I was working on. 8-incher, typical 5-incher. They've been lapped flat, they've been chamfered, and they've been conditioned with mineral oil. Now, about the flattening, something I didn't really dig too deeply into before. Well, I did mention how important it is for flatness. You have a very fine blade. You don't want to be driving it into a curved surface. You just want it to be flat. But again, this is a very short distance. So when you're working, right, if part of this isn't going to make correct contact, like let's say there were dips in the stone here, you're losing a large percentage of your contact possibility. So that's like really inefficient. So that's another reason for wanting to flatten them. But anyway, so they've been flattened, 400x on the Atoma. Then we went to 600x wet dry, then 1000x 1K wet dry. And then they were treated to some mineral oil rub downs. Following that, I went back and did the 600 and 1000x wet dry again. And I focused then because I wasn't happy with the way the edges feel. Now, the chamfering on any stone, but here we're talking about this Barber hone, you want the chamfers to be polished down as much as the working surface, because when you think about it, when you're lapping this, you can wind up with striations coming up to the top. Right? If you look under a loupe, you can see them. Now, I try to lap the chamfer in with going this direction, but it's not a perfect world. So you wind up with almost like hash marks, okay? And those hash marks, where they meet the top, that's like a sawtooth edge. You don't want that. So you want to polish the edges, the chamfers down, so the transition from working surface, the top, to the edge, the side, the chamfer, as baby butt smooth. Same level of smooth as the working surface. Now, both of these have been through the final lapping, 600x, 1000x, twice. Chamfers are polished. There's been a lot of oil applied to them. The last one was a heavy, heavy dose. I just let it sit on there and it soaked right in. It'll probably continue to take more. I don't know. I can feel that this is right. These actually feel smoother than that Lakeside. This is exactly how I want it. This is how it was. This is like sandpaper compared to this. This is like, listen. That's like right on top of the mic. That's a beautiful surface. So when you want to use one of these puppies, remember, printed side up. So in the bathroom, I'd probably just slap some, what do you call it, lather on this. Get your blade out. Perfect feel. Perfect feedback. Perfect contact across the width of the blade from stem to stern on the hone. That's what you're really looking for. You want a nice, continuously smooth feel. If I was to use the other side, it's terrible. I'm not even going to do that. It's just a test blade. But I'm picking up some undercut here, so I know I'm working the apex of the edge up. It's nice. It's a nice hone. It'll give me an edge. If it's not cutting right, it'll get it to cut a little better. It's not going to be the bee's knees. But for the price of admission, I think it's worth checking out. Now, I think the prices on Frictionites and Panamas and a couple of the other Barber hones, I think they're off the rails. I really do. If you got to have one, you got to have one. But something like this isn't too expensive. You put some work into it and you get like something you can throw in your DOP kit. And if your edge starts to fall, if you're on vacation, you can just hit it with 5 or 10 passes. I guarantee you it'll cut a little better. It's not going to be like finishing on a 12K Naniwa. I mean, that would be ideal. If you had a piece of a 12K Nani, like a Superstone, it was this size, that would be like really cool, you know? Shapton makes those Stone 7s. They make really nice little traveling hones too. But this is old. This is ancient. This is history. This is mad cool just because it's lasted over 100 years. I think that's great. Even if you don't use one all the time, I think most guys are going to want to have one in there like a little collection. Anyway, so that's the process. Lap it flat, polish it down, chamfer it, get rid of the chips, surface it so it's really, really flat, polish the edges, polish the top, go to 1000X, apply a lot of mineral oil, and boom, you have a working hone. Anyway, that's what works for me. Listen, in the comments below, leave your stories about your experience with barber hones, what you think. Have any questions? You think I missed something? I probably did, so just remind me in the comments and I'll try and answer because I don't use a script. So anyway, that's my barber hone restoration story, and I'm sticking to it. So all you out there, it's holiday season. Have some fun with your family and your children. Get out there and enjoy life. When you come home at night, get your stones out, get your hone on, and have a great time. Remember, this is all about having fun. So until next time, take care. Talk to you soon.